Hi, I'm Angela Picard, and I am the chairman of Rural Alaskans Training Outreach, or RATO for short. We were able to identify a problem in Native Alaskan villages of them not having access to higher education or specialized trades like we would in Anchorage and Fairbanks. In bigger cities, we have lots of resources at our disposal, lots of people with skills willing to pass them on, but they don't necessarily have that in the villages. Our aim was to provide them with this service without forcing them to leave their homes and their communities and their traditional beliefs. We thought that if we could find volunteers and teachers who had either come from this background or understood it, convince them to go back in return and be able to pay them a living wage, and to pass these skills on to kids who desperately need higher education, that we would be providing a service that would be beneficial to the community and the state. We would be able to do this through grant funding and local fundraisers, but with grant funding you have to be very, very organized and have to be able to account for every cent that's being spent by you and your organization to be eligible for grants in the future from the state. As the chairman, it would be my job to keep our organization organized and on top of our goals. With it being involved with rural communities, we would face a special problem with communication. We would be crossing cultural ties, and we would also be crossing great distances to have this happen. And it would be imperative that we understand that we're not talking to somebody in Anchorage who can run down to the store if they're missing tools. We're also not talking to somebody in Anchorage who can go on vacation or leave whenever they feel like. It's a big ordeal to get them out there, to get things out there, to give them the resources to be able to train individuals. And that's not something that we could take lightly. My biggest problem, I think, would be keeping everybody on the same page. Each community would face its own problem, need its own solution. Therefore, they would need their own teachers with their own specialized sets of skills, with their own equipment. And I think that to have it all operate cohesively, you would have to almost have somebody in charge of each village separately that would report to you and say, here's what we're facing, here's what they want to know. And then as an organization, we would be able to find people in Anchorage or Fairbanks or even in the lower 48 who would be able to teach skill sets to these communities and would be willing to travel out there and help them gain on the knowledge that they need to be functioning members of society. If we were able to give these communities the tools to fix themselves and help themselves, then they wouldn't need to spend so much money bringing people out from Anchorage, and they would almost get a sense of a better sense of self-worth because they're being self-sufficient. And that's a hard thing to do in the villages where everything comes at a price and everything has to be shipped to you. As an organization, our hope would be to empower these communities to be, self-reliant, and through this organization, we would be providing a service that the state desperately needs as well as these communities. And then on the smaller side, we would be helping these kids, build a life for themselves outside of the resources that may have been available to them in these communities beforehand. As the chairman, I would be lucky to be a part of an organization like this, and I would have to work hard to keep my job. But I think with, strong communication and an understanding that everything's not going to go smoothly right away, and that you need to work at a problem to find a solution, and that solution is not going to be clean cut across the board, I think that RATO could be very successful in finding, help for these communities and also providing them with stepping stones onto a better life, so that these kids don't think that the only thing for them to do in the village is to turn to drugs or alcohol, or if they, find a different path, to leave entirely and not come back. Because we'd love for these kids to be able to, gain a trade, maybe move to Anchorage and use that trade, but the hope would be that they would stay in their communities, better their communities, and then be able to turn around and return those skills to the next generation, so that we would create a thriving educational society through our work at RATO.